First, of course, I said thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. And as an honorary member in Omega Beta Iota, it really is a true honor to be here with you to speak about the importance of advocacy for medical students and professional mentors who not only are exceptional advocates themselves, but who teach by action. Of course, I want to congratulate these deserving inductees and honorary members who are future and current leaders within the osteopathic profession. So, as some of you might know, if you know me, I've worked in this town for a long time. And the one question I always get is, that I really get most, is, how do you do this work? Or sometimes it's them shaking their head at me and saying, I don't know how you do this work. And these questions and comments, I don't believe, are meant to be disparaging, of the important advocacy work I do on behalf of ACOM, which of course serves as a unifying voice for osteopathic medical education. But I believe more of a keen observation of the many political and policy challenges an advocate faces in his or her work. While it is true that advocacy can be extremely frustrating at times, dependent upon many factors that influence the policymaking process. So whether it's the results of an election, the politics and/or ideology of the ruling political party, competing stakeholder priorities, sometimes even within our own profession, lack of bipartisanship, that creates a further wedge between political parties, sometimes stifling action. I could stand here, the list goes on and on and on. However, I choose to think of advocacy in my role as a sustainable advocate, as one who understands these challenges, moves through the process with patience and perseverance, and keeps my focus always on the mission. Because in the end, the mission gives us all purpose, and without purpose, we become apathetic. So what are some of the policy challenges currently facing our profession? I could probably stand here and talk to you for a good hour of just the challenges we've had in the last 2 weeks. But I'm going to focus on some of the bigger ones and some of the current ones going on, many of which you all know unless you live under a rock. One policy, of course, is the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, which as currently written will leave 24 million people without coverage under the law while increasing, not decreasing the nation's deficit. I've always believed that although it didn't pass the House this time, ultimately due to many concerns from both moderates and conservatives who basically sunk the bill, that it still has a pulse. The House conservatives in the White House are contemplating a deal as we speak that could resuscitate efforts to repeal and replace the ACA. The crux of this potential deal would give states the choice of opting out of some ACA regulations. However, I really want to note here the importance is that this is all still murky, lots of gray here, and even if it passes the House, it has a very, very unclear pathway forward in the Senate. The upcoming reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, which I've probably personally spoken to many of you about, as well as in multiple rooms where you have asked me to come speak to you, is another critical policy that impacts medical students and their debt loads. As many of you know, the Higher Education Act is a very old law that funds all of these federal financial aid programs that you all depend on for the cost of your education. The HEA has to be continued every 5 to 6 years, and Congress is currently drafting the policy as we speak. So many of you know, and I'm glad to see the EduMed buttons. I see some of them throughout the crowd. We created the EduMed campaign, ACOM did last year. If you haven't joined, go to edumed.com, sign up, learn more about the policies, and get involved. This national grassroots advocacy campaign provides a platform for medical students and other advocates to have a voice at the table and demand that Congress protect the future physician workforce by really demanding that education policies are at the table during HEA negotiations. Everything from graduate interest rates to the protection of the public service loan forgiveness program is in the mix. Through EduMed, osteopathic medical students across the country have written blogs, some of which are in this room, and have shared their personal stories about the impact of student debt on their lives and on their professional futures. They've tweeted, they've posted to Facebook, they've even sent snaps through a Snapchat filter during ACOM's annual Virtual Hill Day, which took place last month during our annual Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. So what do you do? What can you do? How do you get involved? How do you stay involved after you're a medical student? Well, many of you are here. You're already doing it. You're here as members of OBI. You're prioritizing advocacy through action. I always tell students when I hear many of them tell me how busy they are and that they just don't have the time to dedicate themselves to advocacy. I always say to them, here's a tip. You're always going to be busy. You're going to be busy as a medical student, and guess what? You're going to be busier as a resident, and then as a practicing physician, you're only going to be busier. Your lives get busier, and your responsibilities only get greater. I hear from many of you, some of you in this room, the advocates who are engaged and express your frustration to me about some of your peers and the apathy that you see and how to get them involved. You know, this is what I would say to that. Although you can't control what others do, you can take control of your own advocacy. You have to ask yourself, what kind of advocate am I now, and what kind of advocate do I want to be? You see, to advocate, I believe, is critical as a future healthcare leader, and I know you all agree with me. But to be a sustainable advocate, you must have the 3 Ps I mentioned earlier: purpose, patience, and perseverance. Find your purpose and mission. Have patience with the process and be persistent in your advocacy. Remember, I talk to students all the time. We need advocates all across the continuum, whether it is just retweeting a message to your policymaker, being a part of your student leadership, organizing an event on campus, holding a local town forum on issues of importance to you and your community, or attending a lobby day like ACOM's Calm Down Capitol Hill, or AOA's DO Day like you'll be doing tomorrow, or some of your state lobby days. There are also programs such as ACOM's Osteopathic Health Policy Internship, where osteopathic medical students work with our government relations team for 2 months, and it counts as a clinical rotation. I have to give a shout out to our current OB, Fritz, right in the front. And you can get involved in the TIPS program. And you, as a DO or a medical educator, you can participate in ACOM's Health Policy Fellowship Program. There are programs that support you every step of your way as an intern, as a fellow or a resident, and as a practicing physician or medical educator. Reach out to people like me. Reach out to ACOM, which I know many of you have. Reach out to your national associations like ACOM and AOA. Reach out to your state associations. Find out more information and how you can be involved. For those who know me or have worked with me, know that I don't pay lip service to what I say and think about advocacy. I don't have time for apathy or for naysayers. For those in the audience, advocacy is seen as a critical component to a free and democratic system. And the beauty of civic engagement is that it is your individual right. But I would argue further that it is your duty as members of the future physician workforce to continue to use your voice, not just today or while you're a medical student, but throughout your profession. And it is our job at ACOM to support you and to be a resource for you so you can effectively advocate on behalf of the policies that impact you, your patients, and your community. So I would urge you to continue the good fight and not to be discouraged by the challenges, whatever they may be. A truly effective advocate stays engaged, is always informed, and knows how to turn words into action to achieve an outcome. Be an effective advocate. Stay politically active. Constantly stay informed. Use your voice to make a difference. Trust your own judgment. And don't give up when it's hard, because let me tell you, it's always hard. Count on change. Sometimes it's the only thing you've got. Have patience. Change doesn't happen overnight. And in government, sometimes it takes years and years to see real change. And lastly, speak up and speak often. You know, I usually always, when I give presentations, I leave you all with a quote. So in honor of Equal Pay Day, which is today, I'd like to end here with a quote from a renowned scientist and activist who happens to be a female, Jane Goodall. She says, "What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make." Thank you for having me.